Welcome to the Teachers Talkin' podcast, hosted by Dustin and Ghazali Abdul Wahab. In this podcast, we discuss all things education and teaching, from innovative teaching methods to challenges to strategies and much, much more. In this discussion or roundtable-based podcast, we bring in educators from all around the world to talk about a variety of education topics so that we can support as many teachers as possible. We want this to be a place of inspiration, personal and professional development, and simply a place where we can elevate education together. Welcome to Teachers Talkin'. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Teachers Talkin'. I am Dustin here with my co-host Ghazali, and we are excited to be diving into another meaningful conversation with somebody who is doing innovative work in educational leadership. So today we are joined by Jennifer Hartman. She's an associate principal at Memorial Junior High in Lansing, Illinois, not too far from me. She's a former middle and high school social studies and writing teacher, and now in her 8th year as an administrator. Jennifer also serves as the AP chair for South Cook Illinois Principals Association Executive Board and leads her district's new teacher mentoring program. And so today's episode is called Support with Intention. We're going to be exploring how strong mentoring structures can improve retention, reduce burnout, and create lasting pipelines of leadership in schools. So Jennifer, can you just start off by sharing a little bit about your path from the classroom to school leadership and, what experiences along the way have made you passionate about supporting new educators?
Sure. I actually am not one of those people that aspired to go into education. I actually spent most of my middle and high school years believing I was going to become a dentist. I even interned without pay with my own dentist sometimes and volunteered. And I got to University of Illinois. I was accepted, and my plan was to do the pre-dental program. And kind of the first sort of adult decision I made at 17 was I had submitted my transcripts. I was already accepted. I'd taken the entrance exam, and they kind of looked at my math scores and they were like, it would take you 2 years of remedial college math before you could even begin to take the prerequisites for the pre-dental program. So what do you want to do? So 17-year-old me was just, I guess I'll change my major to history, kind of with the intention of maybe I'll go to law school someday, not sure. Got accepted into the secondary education program, was certified as a 6th through 12th grade social studies teacher. And at the time that I graduated, there was the exact opposite of a teacher shortage. There were no jobs. It was really difficult for me to find a job, and kind of serendipitously got my first job because my dad overheard his secretary talking to her daughter who had brought her lunch on summer break, that one of their social studies teachers had suddenly passed away. And so my dad was, it's a school right down the street. You should call the principal. And so just kind of on a leap of faith, because I was getting ready to apply to Dairy Queen and insurance agencies. I wasn't getting interviews anywhere. I picked up the phone and I was, hi, I'm this newly certified social studies teacher. I heard that you might be posting an opening soon. The principal interviewed me the next day, and I was hired the next week. And that was my first position, teaching 6th and 7th grade social studies at Rickover Junior High School in Sauk Village. I was there for 6 years, and then an exciting opportunity popped up to be a founding teacher at a brand new opening school that had never existed before, the Perspectives IIT Math and Science Academy at 35th and Wabash in the city of Chicago. And we got to build a 6 through 12 school from the ground up. So the first year that the school had ever been open, all the stuff, we got to pick the mascot, the colors, the curriculum, the routines, all from scratch. So the year that we opened, we had 6th, 7th, and 9th graders. Then the next year they aged up and we got a new group until we were full. I was there for 6 years, and my last 2 years there, I taught both 6th and 12th grades. I was the bookend social studies teacher, which was kind of an interesting experience. And while I was there is when I began working on my principal certification. Don't know if I really had aspirations at the time to be a principal, but I was sort of in a space where if I looked for additional teaching opportunities, I was kind of limited because by that point I had 10 years of experience. So it was either take a big pay cut, stay where you are, don't advance. So I was starting to kind of think about, well, can I be a department chair? Can I be a dean? I don't really want to leave the classroom. Got an opportunity to teach at a different charter school near Midway Airport for 4 years until I got my first assistant principal job. And so I've had kind of an interesting path. I've been a union teacher, a non-union charter school teacher. I also worked at Uno charter schools while they unionized, was the first union charter school as a teacher there. And I've been an administrator on the other side of the table. I had an opportunity right before and during COVID to work with my mentor, someone I met while I was an assistant principal in Flossmoor. She brought me with her to Kankakee High School. And then an exciting opportunity opened up in my hometown in Lansing at Memorial Junior High School. I did not go to a memorial, but I went to a private school down the street when I was a kid myself. And I was in the band at Memorial. So it's kind of interesting. I get to walk the halls it's very nostalgic for me. I'm very invested in the community. I live in the house that I grew up in. I have a 5-minute commute to work. I'm in the community, and that's kind of a very special thing. So things have come full circle. I'm currently in my PhD program, just received my superintendency certification, hoping to finish that degree sometime in 2027.
Wow.
Oh, wow, wow. Yes, Dustin, I'm echoing you. Wow. You've got a wealth of experience there. I think we're similar in some ways, in the sense that we didn't expect to become educators, did we? Something just happened and the door opened wide and you had no choice but to walk right in. Yeah, the same for me as well. So I'm quite interested in your early career when you said that you started teaching. So do you have any experience with mentoring back then? Did anybody mentor you? Do you role model yourself to any person who attached to you during your early years? Tell us a story about that.
Yeah, for sure. I think that I've been very blessed in having a lot of formal and informal mentors to look up to in my career. My my first teaching job, really, I had two mentors. My formal mentor, which at the time was the 7th and 8th grade social studies teacher. We did a formal mentoring program that I was required to do through a local university with my mentor. And it was kind of your old fashioned, old school. He comes and sits in my classroom once in a while. And then the both of us go to meetings with all the other new teachers and mentors in the South suburbs a couple of times a year. And we did that for 2 years. I lucked out. I had a really great experienced teacher who really helped me a lot with things classroom management, things designing lessons. Both he and I were responsible for teaching the Constitution at that time. So he was a good resource for me to really kind of hone my skills in that sense. But my sort of informal mentor really would have been the principal at that school. I kind of told you about how I just called him on a whim and told him, hey, heard you might have an opening. And when he called and asked if I could come in for an interview that day, I was at the school in 10 minutes and he was the only one there. It was the summer. And I walked in, and this mid-50s African-American gentleman by himself, he was wearing like golf clothes. He was ready to go outside. And he had all of these papers pasted everywhere in his office, and it looked a beautiful mind. He had posters, the little scraps all over the wall. And I asked him, I said, sir, what is that? He had Xeroxed all the pages of the elementary school's 5th grade yearbook and ripped them out and put them on the wall so he could memorize all the incoming 6th graders' names before they got to the junior high. And he said, I do this every year when I'm here by myself and there's nobody to bother me, because I think it's important that you know all the kids. And when I know them before they walk through the door, I think that really is a good thing. And I knew within 5 minutes of meeting him, I wanted to work for him. And at the end of the interview, he said something interesting to me where he said, look, I have my pick. Every job I post, even in our district, which is not a super desirable place to work, I get hundreds of applications right now. And you're fresh out of college, you don't have any experience. If I pick you, you become my personal responsibility. Making you a great teacher is on me. That's a part of my legacy, because you're going to be here way after I'm gone. So it's my job to make you as good as possible. And that's something that stuck with me, and something that I kind of take a lot of thought about when I'm hiring teachers, when I'm interviewing teachers, paraprofessional staff, because if I'm hiring you and I'm vouching for you, it's my job to mold you into the best that you can be, not necessarily the best I could be, but to see your talents and to bring them out in you so that they're the best. And I think about that a lot. And throughout my career, I've had other great mentors, but really those are the first two.
Based on that, what do you think new educators actually need when they're just getting started? What should be in their toolkit, and how can mentors help them with that?
Well, number one is always going to be classroom management. I can teach
Yes,
you, I can teach you content. I can teach you the curriculum. I can teach you the assessment tools relatively easily, but making sure the teachers have what they need to be successful to manage their classroom, to manage their time, and really in some ways to manage their emotion and their efficiency. I think those are things that not necessarily can't be taught. I think they can be honed. I think they can be brought out of people. I think they can be strengthened. But I also think you have to ask teachers what they need. I think a lot of new teachers are afraid to ask for what they want or what they need because this is my boss. They intimidate me. If I ask for help, they're going to see me as weak. They're going to think I can't do my job.
yes,
So I think that it's important to see the talents in those people and cultivate them while also making sure they have the tools they need to be successful, whether that's curriculum, whether it's classroom management. I think it's important to provide people with a mentor. But I also think you can't just say, this person is your mentor, go to them. That mentor needs to be taught how to be a mentor.
Mm.
Otherwise, sometimes you kind of get into these situations where, okay, I've got this great math teacher in my building, and I just hired a brand new, fresh teacher who's also a math teacher. I'm going to pair them together, not realizing that my experienced math teacher doesn't really know how to coach. They might know how to teach math, but do they know how to work with their peers in a collaborative manner? So I think that there's an element of mentoring programs that requires the mentor to be educated as well.
It's really interesting because I feel that's very similar to what my experience was with my mentor, where I originally was not looking to be an administrator and he saw something in me that I wasn't seeing in myself. But then it was all about teaching me how to mentor. We ran a lot of scenarios and things that where he would have me even just sit in when he did interviews or meetings with students and parents just to observe and then talk to me afterwards about what I saw, how would I have done things differently or ask questions, whatever. So I think that's really cool. So what did that process look for you as you and your team started building a new model for mentorship? What were your first steps? What did that process look like?
So about 3 years ago in my district, we surveyed our new teachers at the end of the year because we were using a very traditional, it was through Governor State University, like the teachers did this mentoring program. We provided them with an on-site teacher that we paired them with, but it was a program that was not controlled by us. We didn't control the content. It was something that they went to Governor State for, and they did all of that kind of off-site. And our teachers were giving us some feedback that they felt that it was overwhelming. It was a lot of work. It was like taking a graduate class, and it wasn't necessarily applicable to their context of what they were doing day to day. And it felt extra work. And it was also kind of irrelevant to what they did every day. So that just so happened to coincide with I had to start working on my internship project in my district for my superintendency licensure. And I was brainstorming with my superintendent about projects I could do that impact the whole district. And we kind of settled on the fact that the district had been talking about taking on the mentoring program for ourselves. So we were no longer going to have teachers attend it. We were going to create and be the program. And so myself and our curriculum director, Dr. Christopoulos, we started meeting with another one of our principals who has since retired, kind of as a mini committee. We surveyed our new teachers that had just finished that program, and we asked them what sorts of things would have made it better for them. The first year, which would have been last year, of us completely taking on the whole program ourselves is kind of the second year. The first year we tried it, we had kind of a dual component, a part that we did in district, and then we also paired all of our teachers with a virtual mentor who, regardless of what grade our teacher taught or whatever, that virtual mentor was the same grade as them and the same subject as them, which you can't always have in a district. You don't always have, there's singletons. So this way we could guarantee that all of our teachers had someone with the same context to also teach them offsite. And they did 2 mentoring meetings with that virtual coach a month. And they also did our in-person, we had 5 or 6 workshops per year. The data from the surveys was overwhelming that they liked the idea of the virtual coach, but again, it was too much. It was a graduate course. Even though the person taught their grade, they didn't teach in our district, so they didn't really know our ways. And so because of that, last year we moved to a completely in-house model. And the way that our model is each teacher is paired with a mentor in their building. And then it's kind of a flipped classroom, if you can imagine it. So our year 1 teachers We have 6 in-person sessions, 1 before school, 5 during the school year. They and their mentor attend, and there's a lesson. And that's based on feedback of what our new teachers the previous year told us they needed more training in. Classroom management was a topic, special education was a topic, dealing with difficult parents was a topic. And our administrators, all who have great expertise in a variety of areas, record kind of what we're doing here, a lesson, a presentation on that topic, which is their specialty. I edit it, I make a YouTube video of it. The teachers watch the content of the PD before they get to the meeting. And then when we get to the meeting, instead of having to quote, waste the time on content delivery, now we get to discuss, do role playing activities, reflect, and do kind of some case studies and some scenario activities to help them build their skill set. And their mentor attends those sessions with them. And then once you graduate into year 2, those sessions that are in person, they're all available to you. They're not mandatory anymore. You're allowed to come. You have access to all the videos, but your plan is more of a individual goal setting. So with your mentor, you set some SMART goals for the year, you observe each other a few times, and then your mentor helps you with a professional development plan. And then year 2, you graduate from the mentoring program.
Cool. Everything you just said. It's unusual because that's just not happening in most places, right? Can you walk us through a moment when you saw that system really click for somebody, whether that was a teacher or a mentor?
Yeah. So selfishly, I have more experience with the new teachers that are in my building that I see every day. But 2 years ago, one of the first teachers to go through the completely just our district program, I knew she was going to be a superstar when we interviewed her, but she was still a first year superstar, right? A lot of skills to hone. And she was just so engaged with the program. She would follow up. She would tell me, oh, hey, I learned this. Allison, who is her mentor, she even learned this. It was great. It gives also a lot of our new teachers said that one of the valuable parts about it was the in-person session brings all the new teachers and their mentors from the whole district in one room. And they're able to share their experiences, role play together. So it kind of feels like you're in this together, not you're just by yourself. Because sometimes there's only one new teacher per school building. So now you've got the whole group together and it builds the kind of a little bit of a support system. And that teacher has gone on to be really successful. Now that she's finished with year 2, she's even doing a Golden Apple summertime mentoring program for other new teachers now. So that's really special. And we had one of our teachers who was going through the program. She was our first year teacher last year, but she was a paraprofessional in the district before that. So she actually was seeking a pathway into teaching from being a para, and it was a way to really kind of support her. I think that one of the bonuses of our program is it is mandatory for all of our teachers who enter the district, who are hired, who have less than 1 year of experience. However, if there is a teacher, say, who's coming from another state, Indiana or Wisconsin, even if they have 10 years of experience, it's available to them during the transition. So I think that's a bonus, making it available to others, because sometimes you hire an experienced teacher and you figure, oh, they got this. But then inclusion, I think, is really important. Another kind of success story is one of the people who has been a mentor has now honed her leadership skills. And now this year she is moving into an administrative role in another district. So it's kind of, she learned to become a leader through mentoring in the program, and now
Right.
she's leading. So that's kind of exciting to see.
That's so cool.
Yeah, that's great to see the relationship. Can you tell me more a bit about the relationship that you built with your mentees? Anything that you can remember about how they've developed and how they've developed you indirectly, directly? Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think Dave and I are a great team. And I don't know if it's intrinsic or not, but I told you I live in the community. Dave and I were in first and second grade classes together before he transferred out. And he was also best friends with my cousin growing up. And I didn't even know he worked in the district when I got hired there 4 years ago. So he is very open to trying any kind of crazy idea. So Dave is a very supportive central office person in terms of PD and what do our teachers need. And I'm very much about engaging the teachers. So after every single session, there's a QR code. It asks teachers, What is one thing from the session you liked? What can go next time? Maybe it wasn't very helpful. What are some topics you still need help on, maybe that you're afraid to talk about in the group? And that's really how we build our next sessions. And we took the feedback on our district just opened, I shouldn't say just opened, just basically doubled the size and built a brand new building of our pre-K building. Obviously, we're going to need more teachers because now we're going to be able to accommodate more students. The building is bigger. And one of the feedback pieces about halfway through last year was, this is really great information, but how does this work in my pre-K classroom? I don't teach reading that. I don't teach math that. Our kids are just learning how to use the restrooms correctly and eat on their own and play nicely and use their manners. How do these things apply to us? So kind of Dave and I took that to one of our principals and was like, hey, early childhood is kind of your thing. What are some skills that are transferable across the grades, pre-K through 8? And we kind of were able to design our next session to be a little bit more about some of those skills that are a little more transferable, which really we're going to need in the future anyway, because if we keep building this pre-K program, most of our new teachers are going to be there because we're adding classrooms.
Yeah.
Nice.
Wow.
Okay, Jennifer, now I need your help. I'm a mentor too.
Okay.
I need you to mentor me right now. How do you cope with, I'm not sure whether you've experienced this, but you've put in so much resources, you've built up the mentee to fit into your organization, your school so well, and then suddenly the mentee leaves, or the mentee burns out, or the mentee quits the profession, and you have this feeling, was it me? Didn't I do a good enough job? Yeah, so how do you cope with losing a mentee?
Well, I think that you can't look at it necessarily as losing a mentee. You've lost an employee. The lessons that you've sort of taught them, whether they're applicable to the classroom or not, whether it's about work-life balance or standing up for yourself in a meeting or learning to manage your time, those are skills that are going to make that person successful in whatever they do next. So you may have lost an employee, but you probably have not lost a mentee because you've developed a lot of skills in them that are transferable. And I try not to be selfish with my employees. That's the hard part, right? When you see something great in someone, I had a great ELA teacher. I knew she wanted to be an administrator. So for 2 years, kind of on the sly, informally, I mentored her. I invited her to my drop-in sessions with Colin Nolan for the South Cook IPA, where we mentor first-time administrators. And I practiced interviews with her. And I've lost a great teacher, but she's gained a step on her path. And I don't view that as a loss for either of us. I had the first principal who ever hired me to be his assistant principal. I had an experience where we were in a meeting and there was someone who was just really very cruel and dismissive to me in that meeting. Just the kind of just rude behavior that it's hard when it's your boss. You can't really say anything. You just kind of take it. And after the meeting, I remember saying, Fred, I can't believe how bad that was. She was so awful to me. And he said, I know how you feel, Jen. However, whatever's happening, shut up and learn the lesson. And you just learned a lesson of exactly how you don't want to be. So every interaction you have, let it teach you how you do or how you don't want to be and learn that lesson. And so I try to teach that to mentees in dealing with their colleagues and dealing with their coworkers. I think that one thing, I'm a Grey's Anatomy fan, right? So I think one thing that we miss out on in the education profession, we say we're a profession, but then we don't operate doctors, right? So when doctors have a big deal that happens, a surgery that goes bad, somebody dies unexpectedly on the table, they wait a few weeks, a few months, whatever. They invite everybody into that M&M meeting where it's brutal, right? They put up the pictures. They say at this step in the process, what would you have done? What would you have done? Here's this test result. What would you have done? And they reflect together critically as a group. And we don't do that as educators. So I think that's kind of key when you're dealing with your mentees, right? They had a terrible day. Their 7th hour class was just an absolute nightmare. They had to write up a bunch of kids. They had to call a bunch of kids' parents and they're crying in your office. Maybe not in that moment is the time to have that M&M, but maybe a few weeks later, be like, hey, I know you struggled with your 7th period class that day. Walk me through it. What happened first? What happened next? What are some options you could have done at this step where it's kind of non-threatening and more of coaching? I think that's something that the nature of the beast, we don't always have time for, But at least with administrators, I think that's something that we have to make time for. With my admin team, when we have a really big disciplinary incident, right in the moment, maybe we can't do that and ask the questions of how could we handle this differently? Did we not have supervision at the right places? Whose idea was it to have this kid and this kid in the same assembly at the same time? Can we strategize in the moment when emotions are high? Isn't the time to do that? But we can learn something from the medical profession and how they do that. And I do try to at least informally do that with my teachers at a certain point. So they feel it's not that you did something wrong. It's that what can you do better?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good advice. Yeah. Your idea of reframing is not losing a mentee. They still gain something from you. And hopefully it leads to their success wherever they go. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, the idea of how you reframe things, but then also how you can come back to it and reflect on it. And that story actually is just kind of leading me into the next thing I wanted to ask you, which is regarding challenging moments, because having a teacher crying in your office is one of many types of challenging moments as an administrator in schools. From your perspective as an educational leader, what's one of the most challenging moments that you've had to navigate? And then how would you say that helped to shape your leadership style? Because you're talking about learning from each of these moments. So now I'm kind of curious.
Well, there's been certainly a lot of them, but I think the first time that you sign the paperwork to expel a student or to put a student up for an expulsion hearing. I think I once wrote an article or a blog about this. All administrators have been teachers. All teachers have not been administrators. So it's very easy for a teacher to armchair admin. They should have done this. They should have done this. The kid should have been this. But when it's your pen that's on that paper signing something that is going to make a kid's life harder, is going to make a family's life harder. And even if they quote deserve it, because that's what the school policy or the board policy says, that doesn't make it easy. And it's you who loses that sleep at night. And the first time I ever dealt with an expulsion hearing, it was kind of the perfect storm of events, right? It was the day before Christmas break. And I think it was a 2 p.m. dismissal. And the principal was leave as a gift to the teachers instead of making them stay till their contract time. He said, everybody leave as soon as the buses are gone. Enjoy your Christmas break. And it just so happened to be on a day he had a dentist appointment. So my co-assistant principal and I were like, go ahead, we got this, Fred. Let's dismiss the building. And of course, kids were caught on the bus pulling out with drugs. So it's the day we're leaving for Christmas break. The principal's not there. So it's both of our first year as an administrator. No one else is there. It's figure it out. And so we're on the phone with the superintendent and we're frantic. And now we have to meet with these kids' parents. I don't think we left the school until 7 o'clock that night when everybody else had left at 2. And it was these emotionally draining, horrible conversations with these families. Your child is going to have an expulsion hearing. It's the holidays. Here's the legal process involved. And that's just really difficult. And again, kind of perfect storm, right? In reflection, should we always have someone there a little later just to be sure? Yeah, that's a lesson I learned from that. Should we have discussed what the process is? Should that kind of disciplinary action occur beforehand so that even without the principal in the building, we would have known what to do without having to frantically, yeah, those are things that we should have done, but hindsight is 2020. Even in as little as preparing for the expulsion hearing, right? Now I know how to document just in case I have to go to an expulsion hearing. Then I didn't. So I think that you have to learn a little bit from every stressful experience so that it's going to happen again, probably. So the next time you have to go through that stressful experience, do you have the muscle memory? Are the things that you are going to need in place? And every time you go through one of these things, you kind of learn a little bit more. Here's how I could have approached this. Here's how I could have done it. And then the next time you kind of have that quote muscle memory. Those things are never easy. It's never easy to look a parent in the eye and be like, I'm sorry. This is what's happening. And it's never easy one of the young ladies involved was before her parents came sitting just sobbing in my office writing her statement saying, Miss Hartman, am I getting expelled? Miss Hartman, am I getting expelled? Am I getting put out of school? And I didn't have that answer because that's a decision only the school board can make, not even the superintendent makes that decision. And so there's balancing those emotions while building the skill of making it an effective process is hard emotionally. And as administrators, you don't have a whole union of teachers that you can consult about that. There's other administrators, sure, in your building or in your district. The further up that organizational chart you get, the less peers you have.
Those are the hardest lessons. The expulsion ones are absolutely the hardest, because I don't know if you had to deal with that, but they're the worst thing.
I mean, there is no good outcome, right? There is no good. I mean, there's Sophie's choice. There is no good outcome. Do I risk the integrity and discipline and environment of the school to benefit this kid, or do I hurt? Research shows, we know what expulsion does. It reduces your chance of finishing high school by X%. It increases your chance of being involved in the criminal justice system by X%. There is no good outcome in that.
Yeah, no, not at all. And I think it's really interesting that you tell that story with it being during your first year as an assistant principal and as a mentor. So how do you, I'm just thinking about how first year teachers go through not to that same level of challenge, but also go through significant challenges. And that could be behavior. It could be the first time that a kid cusses you out or throws something in the classroom, right? It also could be academic or emotional and mental health related. So I'm curious, how do you take those types of learning experiences that you've had in your journey in first year challenges, and how do you pass that kind of learning on to the people that you're mentoring to be able to help them be able to pass that on and keep the wealth going?
Well, I think it's about growth mindset, right? So even through the teacher evaluation process, it's not about being perfect. It's about learning and growing for the next time. So I try to take an approach in my evaluation meetings with teachers. What are your goals? What would you like to improve? And here's a goal that I'm setting for you where I would you to improve, but I'm going to help you get there. I don't believe in punitively punishing people on their evaluations. I explain very clearly, here's the rubric, here's what you need to get from a 2 to a 3, a 3 to a 4. If you want to work on this domain, I'll coach you in that area. But I think getting through the tough times, you have to have that same kind of coaching mentality. Be okay, so here's what happened. Why did it happen? Was this just a random thing? I mean, some stuff just you can't control it if a fire breaks out. It just happened. Or maybe it happened because you weren't paying attention, or the assignment was too easy, or X, Y, and Z happened. There's things that are in your control and things that are out of your control. If it was in your control, what can you do next time to kind of prevent this stuff? And I think that's just the conversation that you have. I think a lot of teachers are afraid that their administrator will find out that they messed up. And I tell teachers, I mess up every day. I absolutely mess up every day. And depending on whose perspective you're getting it from, I'm messing up more or less on that day. Right. So I'm honest with teachers. No one is excellent fours down the road every single day, least of all me. I question it if my own boss doesn't give me at least one area of needs improvement, because if you think I'm that great, then I'm not growing. I believe, I personally, it's a pet peeve of mine when people say, I was just being honest. Why are you mad? Because you can be honest without being a jerk. So I try to take the approach of, I'm going to be honest with you, but I'm going to do it in a way that, number one, preserves your dignity and your feelings. And number two, gives you some advice or steps that we develop together, because I'm not the guru, right? What worked for me might not work in your classroom. So we're going to collaboratively come up with something that works for you. Don't just take my classroom management plan and do it, because that might not be you. Let's work together on one. I'd be happy to help you, or I'd be happy to help you create it. I'd be happy to help you implement it, but I'm not just going to hand it to you, because what works for me might not work for you.
Nice. Yeah. So that's something that we really, really want to see in schools. As for the leadership, I'm curious to know, how do you identify teachers to be on the leadership program for mentoring? And how do you make them see their potential to lead, even if they don't see it in themselves?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we've been blessed in the first couple of years of our program because we have some really experienced, great teachers on our staff that want to do it. And I will fully admit our program is not complete in my mind, because in my mind, the next step is to get a cadre of trained mentors that are always kind of on deck, that as we have openings, we can slide people in where
Yeah.
applicable based on their personality and stuff. We're not there yet. That's kind of the next dream. But right now, my principal and I, when we have an opening in our building, we kind of discuss once we have a candidate. So we have this person that we're going to hire for this role. Our first thing is, what do we think their skill set is? What do we think their kind of self-identified in the interview areas for growth might be, or areas they might need help adjusting? And then what teachers do we have on our staff that's their strength, their personality, and people that we know are willing to do the extra work of the mentoring program. And then we usually it's almost always over the summer, but it's not always. So if it's during the summer, we'll pick up the phone, we'll call them. Hey, we found a replacement for such and such teacher. We think that you would be a great mentor because here are the requirements of you in the mentoring program. Here's the compensation for the program. Is this something you're interested in doing? We don't make them. We don't assign them. We always have a backup person if they say no. But we do stress to them that if you agree to be this person's mentor, it's really important you go to these 6 days so that you can work with all of us in the workshop together, and your mentors or your mentee is not alone. So we do stress that to them. But really, when it comes down to is this a person that we know is collaborative? Is this a person that we know is empathetic? Is this a person that we know has a growth mindset? You can't just automatically choose your most veteran teacher. They might not mesh. You have to think about the personality. You have to think about the way that person runs their classroom, and as well as your vision and your school improvement plan. Just because someone is experienced does not mean that they're teaching the way that it's going to take to move your school. So you have to kind of think about, when you have a brand new teacher, just Rudy Williams told me, it's my responsibility to make you the best you can be. Part of that is choosing the best mentor for you. Just because somebody's super experienced, if I want you to be great coming right out of college, when you are fresh faced and you are into technology and you are into formative assessment and you are into project-based learning, shame on me if I just pair you with the teacher who hands out worksheets every day and says, be quiet, no talking, be quiet, no talking, because that's going to crush their spirit, their innovation. If that's their mentor and who's telling them, no, you have to do this way, don't smile until Christmas. Everybody has their personality is part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, very true. That's one of the ways that you match, right? So it's through the personality types. Have you ever had a situation whereby the person says, hey, I'm ready to mentor, but the person is not ready to mentor? And how do you tell them, sorry, you're not ready to mentor?
Yeah.
Yeah, not exactly that. We had a person reach out to us and say, hey, if you ever need a mentor, I'm available. And we kind of got out of having that conversation because the opening that we had, we hired somebody with 15 years experience who, thanks for stepping up, but the person doesn't need the program. We would be happy to set you guys up so you can collaborate. Please help them adjust, but no need to do the formal program. So we kind of got out of it, just kind of it happened that way. But I don't think we've had that conversation. And part of it, I think, has to do with the way our mentors are compensated, right? So it's a timesheet. So it's not a stipend. So when you go to the meetings and when you do the events, you get paid for that event. And you're kind of asked by your principal, hey, we have this person who's coming in. Do you want to mentor them? I think moving forward, as this shortage increases, as I'm sure it is bound to, it would behoove us to already have trained mentors ready to go. Maybe you may get a stipend position. So as they're needed, it's kind of put me in coach kind of a thing. They've all received some kind of similar training or induction program on how to mentor. We're not there yet, but I think maybe if you make it something where you had to apply to and you had to show interest in, and you had to maybe as simple as write a paragraph about what's your leadership philosophy. Why do you want to mentor? What traits do you use in the classroom that make you a valuable mentor? And there's some kind of process you would for any building leadership thing, a department chair or a dean. I think that kind of legitimizes the position itself, but we're not at that point yet. And we haven't had so many openings that we would necessitate that. At this point, it's kind of The principal individually reaches out to who they think would be the most appropriate. And if that person says no, we go down the list and we find somebody else who's appropriate, even if that means not necessarily somebody in the same grade or content.
Really, really interesting. What advice would you give if there was a school leader or a teacher out there who wanted to start rethinking how they support staff, but they don't really know where to begin? What kind of advice would you give on first steps to building this type of a support system?
Well, you got to ask your teachers, especially your newer teachers that are newer, or if you have new teachers that are leaving after a year or two, have the conversation. How could you have been supported better? What supports do you need? What things are in place? We don't do this in my current district, but something that a former district of mine did. Our principal had once a month informal, non-mandatory first, second, and basically non-tenured. Year 1 through 4 teachers were invited. And it was just kind of in the library after school. You could drop by, socialize, and just kind of spitball problems. What problems did you have this month? How can I help you? What do you need from me? And just kind of hearing that feedback. I thought it worked really well because number one, they saw that he was willing to give up his time an hour after school, buy snacks, sit and listen to them, and just kind of be supportive. And it might be as simple as, hey, I really need markers for my classroom. But he didn't know that until somebody tells him. So having that kind of as a standing after school event was very helpful to us in the building at the time. But he was very careful and intentional about he didn't want to just send out an anonymous survey because anonymous surveys take away my ability to follow up with you.
Mhm.
So if Dustin fills out my survey, says, what's bothering you this month? And he just goes on a tirade. Here's everything wrong with the school. Not this, not this, not this. Okay, great. But I don't know who said that. So I can't go in your classroom and help you with any of that stuff unless you've made it obvious who you are from what you
Yeah.
wrote, right? So anonymous surveys are great if you're looking for feedback on a PD session. If you're looking for feedback on your school culture, maybe not so much because then it turns into this silent gripe sesh. But you've taken away my ability as an administrator to go out into the trenches and support you because I don't know who's having problems with what. It's just a
Mhm.
blanket. I don't know who said what. So him having those intentional, hey, if you're non-tenured, this is the support cafe after school. And if nobody showed up, we ate the snacks and we left. And if only one person showed up and we had a personal conversation, we heard what they were going through and we kind of tried to coach them through it, problem solve, get them the supplies they needed. Hey, my 4th hour class is just, could you just swing by and listen to what they're doing? You don't even have to come in. Just I want to just stand in the hallway. Am I doing the right thing here? Am I upholding the school rules correctly? Just kind of peek in. Okay, no, now I'll set my watch. Okay, 4th hour, go by this teacher's classroom. But if I don't know that, how can I support you? You're just suffering in silence.
Yep. Yep. Fantastic. As we close things up, do you have any final pieces of advice? Anything we didn't talk about that you would to share?
Well, I would say, at least on the administrative side, I tell this to administrators that I work with, you've got to have a mentor and preferably not in your district, preferably not someone who evaluates you. You have to have someone who can be honest with you about your skills and where you're stumbling, what your blind spots are, what your strengths are, somebody that you can bounce ideas off of that is non-evaluative. And I know that many districts feel that when they hire an assistant principal, that that's that person's principal's job. But that's simply not always the reality. Different principals have different mindsets on what their assistant principal is, if we're being honest. For some, that assistant principal is an instructional leader that they cultivate and mentor and turn into a great principal or leader someday who could run the building in their absence. Some principals treat their assistant principal their personal secretary. Some treat them, okay, now you're my personal assistant. You're doing all the principal stuff I don't to do, and that's your job. You're just doing that stuff, or you're doing all the assessment stuff. And I expect you to come in and do X, Y, and Z, and I'm doing X, Y, and Z. And they kind of view that mentorship thing as someone else's responsibility. Some superintendents try to mentor their building administrators, but that's your evaluator. That's your boss at the end of the day. And what they say goes, whether or not that meshes with your leadership style or whatever. So I think it's extremely important if you're going to get into leadership to have some kind of mentor outside of your district that can be honest with you and can be supportive of you. And that if you don't know where to go, I'm sure your state, your country, whatever has some kind of organizations. In Illinois, the Illinois Principals Association has regional meetings. Go to those regional meetings, network. National Association of Elementary School Principals or National Association of High School Principals, IASA, all of those organizations have different ways that you can get some kind of mentor. And it might not be free, or it might be free, but it should be a non-evaluative person in your life. One of the things I tell my teacher mentees, and this is a controversial opinion, you have to have something other than this. Whether it's your friends, your boyfriend, your spouse, you have to have somebody in your life who's not involved in this work of teaching. You have to have other things and other perspectives. You have to have somebody who's not embroiled in the world of education 24/7 to bounce ideas off of and to decompress with. It doesn't matter if it's your mom, your dad, your cousin, your boyfriend, your wife, but somebody who is not just in ed all the time. And one of that superstar teacher I mentioned before, she actually asked my advice a couple of years ago. She's, "You think I should teach summer school?" And I said, "If I'm being honest, I don't. I don't think you should teach summer. You're going to burn out." I was like, "If you want to make money over the summer, sure, absolutely, get a job, drive DoorDash, bartend, do something, but it has to be different than this, or you won't ever have the opportunity to recharge, reset." One of the big advantages of school is we reset every year. We get to cycle. We get to start over with a fresh school year. If you're in the corporate world, if your business is going bad, it's just going to go bad until things turn around. There is no, "Oh, on August 25th, it'll start fresh." There's not that. If you work for a business or a bank, we have that advantage where it starts over. The good, the bad, and the ugly. We might have a great year. We might have an awful year. But on August 25th or whenever school starts, that's your chance to start over. But if you never gave yourself a break from it, you're not really starting over. You're just continuing. So I kind of advised her, I don't think you should teach summer school. Not because I don't think you wouldn't be great at it. You would. Not because I don't think you would enjoy it, because you would. But come November, you're going to be, wow, I'm tired. So,
Yeah.
I mean, she did work over the summer. She did get herself a little part-time job. And weirdly enough, the last day of school, when I saw her packing up her classroom, she said, "Thanks for telling me not to teach summer school because I'm so refreshed." See? So I think you've got to have something outside of education and you've got to have somebody outside of education. But inside of education, you have to have somebody who's going to be non-evaluative and a rock.
I couldn't agree more. Awesome. Well, Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your story and the work that you're doing. It's really, really great. And to our listeners, thank you, as always, for being here and being a part of our conversation. Remember, if you enjoy Teachers Talking, please subscribe, leave a review, share it with a fellow educators. New episodes drop every other Monday. And if you are interested in being a guest, you don't need to be an expert at anything, just interested and passionate about education. You can use the form linked in our show notes to sign up to be a guest. So, Jennifer, thank you. Ghazali, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, and until next time, thanks for listening. Keep on teaching.